And Correctional Services Michael Masutha is handing over the exhumed remains of anti-apartheid activists at Freedom Park in Pretoria. The ceremony forms part of the department's efforts to implement the recommendations made by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the TRC, which aim to bring closure to the families of those whose lives were lost due to political activities during the apartheid era. Let's go there live.
Lebo ma comrade ya PAC, ma ANC, kaofela le ba teng mona le VIP tsa rona. Khotso pulana ala.
Re bine jwalo re ne re pushe nako because re sebetsa ka tlasa nako e tla re ha re ya bofelo re tla le fa nako le kgone go bina mme motsotsong wa jwale re tla bitsa ba lelapa la bo Richard Motswahae ya emetseng lelapa la bo Richard Motswahae a tle ka pele go tlo buella ba lelapa. Thank you very much.
Setšhaba sa Afrika rata le dumedisa le le leboa o ka attenda ceremony ena ka tsela e le attendileng ka teng le dinamas tse le attendileng ka tsona mona o eme Thamsanqa Motswahae e leng setloholo sa Thamsanqa Richard Motswahae ke romilwe ke ba Motswahae o ka leboa Department of Justice, the Ministry wa yona, Department of Military Veterans, the Ministry wa yona, mokgatlo wa PAC, Government of South Africa, municipality wa Mogale City to make this possible, the sending over of the remains of our loved ones possible. Here in front of us lies the remains of heroes and heroines whose young lives were taken away cruelly by the then apartheid regime. Bahakabana ba joinile struggle Hokabana, South Africa or Africa liberated from the clutches of colonialism. Bobaling, Kitsepa, Basaitumela, the way South Africa has turned out to be. South Africa, Yagasheko, self-fulfillment, self-enrichment. Ya Motoland, the leaders are very willing. Okarikisal Fasilarona for a case of whiskey. As struggle is never set away, but when you struggle, who come on Africa, actually, Bukobe, Lechatelo, ya colonialism. Rato Leboa, Mukatwa PAC, Ralhotats, please carry the struggle forward. Le Fasila Ronald so good. Up until Le Fasila Ronald could leave, Rato Fredo.
Always to keep us on our toes. Rohopole hore bahakabana habashwella lefela. Madiabona atsulugileng askatsulogela lefela. So for now, Ketabita Babo Josiah Mutsumi to come forward. Ha Batakapili, can we call them by a revolutionary song?
Right, we seem to have lost that line. We will try to reconnect at where the remains of anti-apartheid activists are being handed over to their families at Freedom Park in Pretoria by the Minister of Justice, Michael Masutha. We'll try to reconnect as soon as we have that line back.
Ke rata go ema mo ke emela ba ga Motšhumi nna ke le setlogolo sa kwa Motšhumi motho ya robetseng mo ke malume ke ngwana wa bomme re ditlogolo jaaka re re bona re le yana se se tona ke gore le tla re bona re le ba bannyane ka gobane batswadi ba rona khale ba tsamaela tsela e go fitlheleng gore ba sa tlholo ba khona go nna le maoto mara ke rata gore ke le leboge ke go leboga minister ke le leboga ba botlhe ka ditilo tsa lona ka go letelana gore ka jeko lena e be re lefa ke le leboga ba botlhe ba mo holong ke re Africa isoletu ke re yalo ke re tlo go tsaya marapo a ga malume Josiah Butana Motšhumi bana ngwana wa ga otata le o malisi ke rata gore re lebogile ma-Africa marapo ke a rona e tla re ga re boela gae re lo bolelela batswadi ba rona gore ba mama ba malome ba uncle malome re tlile le ene re le ditlogolo le ditlogolwana le lesika lotlhe la ga borra Motumi re lebogile ke a leboga maAfrika
Thank you very much. And I know this is a ceremony of emotions to remember the people that you knew, and for the family, Bahopola, Babobona, Bomalume, Borangwani, Lebo Ramokolo. Me, at the moment, Kinekito Lepi who acknowledge the leadership here, Tate Mike Mundane, thank you very much. I've seen you somewhere there. Qui acknowledge Robaten Hahaumona. Qui voulait qui acknowledge Mayor wa Mohale City because ki utwa khafetsa bantse ba ho mention hora hore o samikile karolo e kholo thata hore this ceremony be successful. The executive mayor, councillor Dipudi, Realebohaga, what you did to assist that community. Meritwa la pele ka programme e ya rona re tlo go bitsa ba emetseng musi wa rona Petros Ntshole gore ba tla ka pele go tlo fana ka puo. Thank you very much.
Bagolo ke a le leboga ke rata go le leboga thata bagolo nna ke nna Thedisoloro la ka go Petros Ntshole ga ke gopola sentle ga ke kgaogana le masole ka di 15 tsa June ka 4 o'clock ga tla re ka mamotswa ka di 16 batho ba ba modimo ba ba ile bolaiwa tota re ditsela e ke tsamaileng e ne le tsela e telele thata from 1961 go fitlhelela ka se sebaka mme anonyana bagolo gore ke fitlhe fa ke leboga ntate Dipudi mme ya ra wa rona ke leboga Aunt Francine batho ba kile mare ga ke bua le bone ba re retse batho ba kile mare tsamaisa tsela e telele thata gore re fitlhe fa batho re tshware icon ko Mogale City ga ke rate go laiketsa batho gore re fitlhe fa ke mayor o wa ka ke gopola antare koko ke tla leka ga ke irele ANC ga ke irele mokgatlo wa phe a re ke irela setšhaba se sa ko Mogale City a re koko ke tla leka go fitlhelela gore ga ke tse gore a nna tota ke tla kgona mme fela bagolo ke itumetse thata tsela e ke tsamaileng ena go setse nna fela ke lewi ko Manzeli bagolo ba tlhokafetse ga ke tse gore a modimo o nampetse lone letsatsi le la ka jekole ruri gore ke fitlha fa ntate moruti ga ke tse gore ke fitlhile jang ka jeko ga utlwa ke wena ke na le short breath ke leboge banake ba ba kileng ba ntheka e bompha ya sethata e re ga ke moromagwa ke mola ke re tsamaya ko Pretoria a re mama ga ke go ka re ngwana ka tsela ya motho ke molong o tla bo o fitlhokolele mme ke lebogile thata batho radipudi ke lebogile Australia ke lebogile ga go na mafoko a nka bua ntate moruti ke lebogile le mokgatlo wa rona ke le lebogile thata ga ke le go kgakala ruri ke lebogile ga ke na mafoko a mantsi
just to breathe. Aribisa, the last speaker waruna from the family, ya Thomas Molatlegi. All right. Me a rutlwa pelo a e thefua ha botlhoko ke re ga ke nyake gore awe. Okay. A re mo feng sebaka re mo reeletse.
Dumelang bagolo le setšhaba se se tletseng fana nna ke Miki Molatlegi ke setlogolo sa kwa Molatlegi nako ene bo malume ba kreya pale. I'm sure I was 2 years or 1 year. Ile phakela ha ile phakela nkgono wa ka a ba re kona a re ile go tsamiwa ka moso nkgono wa ka ba re stokolo se ke kopa o sale le thabo le phete ke Facebook ya malume ke be ke sala le bone batho ba tsama motshegaro otlhe ha ke itse gore go ile go kae ba tsamaile ka lori ya mmadi seile ha ke itse gore go ile go kae ke ba bone ga ba boa ba le mo lori ya mare ga ba folo ke ga le sello fela go liwa no ke maketse gore ka go ne sentse ke le monyane ga ke itse gore no go etsagalang ga ke itse mangwanaka a ba kopana le batho ba ne ba tsa di nepe tsa khale tsa black and white mangwane a ba ke ne ke tshwere phete ka letsogo le phaya le phete le tlhapa ba ntsentse mogala ka rwa le tlhapa a ke tse mangwana ka bone ka e batho ba motho a snepe a ba re shoota snepe ka tsatsi le lengwe ke ntse ke tela kwa mangwana ka ke be ke bona snepe se ke kopa mangwana ka ke re mangwana ke kopa snepe se tle mangwana ka tsatsi le lengwe se tontswela mosola a ba re ngwana o istikana snepe se ka le nna ke remembrance ga o itse wena no se tsomiene ga ditse go etsagalang ga ke tla letsa snepe se mara ke no go utlwile botlhoko rona re ditlogolo tsa kwa molatlhisi so malume ka ona le bana nana le bana ba ifo bashimane ba bararo bashimane ba babedi le ngwanyana o iwane so phayasi ke lasbono ya malume phete ga sala a le hosi ba babedi wa itse re phayasi ke kgaitse ke nna ka ya no batho ntwena e botlhoko nna ebile ga ke kganna go ga di kgone le go itlotlela bana ba ka gore go no go etsagala eng because ne ke sentse ne ke le monyane dinepe tseo le ano di teng ina le snepe sa malume ka malume ne le motho na kuka ditshipi somebody motho na le montle ka matsatsi ya botlhe o no ka re malume ka ne re mitsa le Jeremiah go na kana mitsa ngwana le Jeremiah motho na le montle ka matsatsi ya botlhe so maburu ba na swile ba tlosa le fatse is painful ona go mo ga na le bana ba go ga ba bolele ne le seo ga tsisipo ke ba bontsha snepe ke la bona go nne ke le mokana ka la bona go nne ke le mokana ka ga malume a ke ba ga e setse le phete le thabo ke sa itse ga te batho ba ile go kae go etsagala eng ra bona tsatsi le go khona ka ntho tela re Niki stokolo saka are o tlo gola o tla sala le tsona rona re tlaberile ene ka tota gona nna ke setse le bone ke nna motona ke setse bana ba botlhibana so it's painful batho bana ba seyo ka nako ya batho a ba itse sepe ile batho bana ga se le bablo ka moso phakela ga le tsoga re kreile le fatshe le khabile le so le le otho go no le sno se sa motlholo e ga re magetse go etsagala eng go tsamaile dikhosi so ke tla go thuta ga ke eme fa because ga ke nna mantso ke bore ke eme ka pelo e botlhoko go re ka ba bona batho ba bona gore malume batho bana ka ne ba kapale ba ne ba banyane se ba le banyane ba isi ba enjoy life ya bophelo so ke a leboga ba go
the leadership of the Two Liberation Movement a chance to come to pay their tributes. Before I do that, I want to recognize my brother, Mark Shinas, who's here, for having time today to come to observe this moment. Also, Mike Matsubani. We used to be together in Khotso House in those days. And also, Ganingam Ngukani and Orosha Mutswaedi. Sorry? Mutswadi, that's right. And also Comrade Sibusi Sokaba. So we say thank you for the time. Today, Ritroba Mona to commemorate the life and time and struggle of our heroes and heroine Barobetse Mona Pila Haruna. Nekana Kuyena, kita starta Pireka Hufa, General Mafika Mashangu to come forward atofana Kamantswe.
Viva Women's League, viva! Viva! Viva the Youth League, viva! Viva! Manda! Manda! Maibuye! Maibuye! Comrades and friends, at least one of our own, Tabo Ramute, combat name given, has been brought to us again. It's the last one, more than unit of 6, which was killed by the satanic apartheid regime. And then we acknowledge even the comrades from the PAC, because the fight that we are fighting, comrades, into all these comrades that are sleeping here today, they fight for what we have today. All these comrades, their blood nourished the freedom tree that we are having today. Yet, comrades, is not yet to win. And then especially our military veterans who fought for this liberation, they are not taken care of. They are living in squalor. Yet we've got a government. Comrades, we didn't prepare so much. SMKMVA, we were caught napping. So I'm going to be short. What I'm going to say today is that we acknowledge the NPA to at least try to bring our comrades so that Kapila and give them a very, very revolutionary burial. Manda!
Kile Katola request Rastafari and Kogai Uzwi Rasta Uzwi. Okay, thank you very much. Kana Gwena Kitabisa, the president of the PAC, to come atofana kamantswe libitong labahalebana ba robetse mona as he ascend the stage le kamofa a revolutionary song. Izwe lethu e-Afrika. Thank you, Program Director and Minister of Justice, Honorable Masutha, and the whole team, Mr. Taba, who has been working very hard beyond this program, the CEO of Freedom Park, the Mayor, the leadership of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, and all our veterans that are here, the leadership of the African National Congress who are here, and the membership, the families of our heroes, all of them, on behalf of the Pan-African and all protocol observed. I'm aware that I may not be able to recognize some people who are here by their names. But on behalf of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, we are happy to be here today to finalize the program, the handover program of our heroes. Now we have been with the families through all the pains and all the challenges over a period of time. Now I'm sure we are now coming to the end of that program, of the pain. Now, but as we are gathering here to finalize that particular program, I think it's very important for us to look briefly into why are we here, more deeper. We will normally have, as and when the country is becoming free, our heroes will then come in front because our heroes are part of our history. There are those who fought for the freedom that we are all enjoying and talking about every day. It also reminding us that the freedom that we are talking about, we are living in today, that though it did not come free, there are those who paid with their own lives, and that the families that have contributed immensely for where we are today. Therefore, we should never ever take the freedom and the democracy that we are in for granted, particularly the youth and the young people. Because there are those families and there are those people who have contributed immensely. Later I will obviously touch on what needs to be done, particularly to their families, because the gap they have left in their families is still there. And I think we need to talk about how do we close that particular gap. But today we are going through the corridor of our history and seek to reconnect with our heroes beyond the graves. Now, some thought that as and when those people were buried by the apartheid regime to the unknown graves, their history will never be unknown again. But 23 years, 24 years in our democracy, we have gathered here to still salute and receive them as our heroes, the heroes of a struggle for freedom and independence. Now, this freedom and independence, which has been nourished by the blood of these heroes, was for me and you and for the future generation to be free. Hence, we need to take care of this freedom, but we need to define it properly and its context. To the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, they died not only for political freedom, they brought about democracy, but one key element of our freedom, which is the land, remain unfree. Now, you do not only free the dispossessed people politically, you also need to free them economically. And the key to that freedom is the land question. We have been very consistent as the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, and will remain consistent into the future. And Sobukwe taught us that once you see us to begin to modify the views and the feelings and the aspiration of our people, you must call us traitors. Therefore, we are not allowed in the PAC to dilly-dally when it comes to the question of the land. We are saying the land must be returned to the original owners, who are the African people, so that they can begin to reorganize their social lives and their economic life. The beginning of life is on the land. Now, therefore, that will remain our key call, and it's not for political convenience, it's for real. Now, these heroes, us and when we salute them and probably pay our last respect to them, we know what the cost they died for, and we must continue to live. We must continue to close the gap that they've left. But it's through their blood that we continue to draw inspiration year in, year out. That tells us until we are totally free, until our people are able to organize and determine their lives, we will not stop. But freedom is not a one-day process. As we are now going to the election, it will remain a process. This process needs to be guided by leadership with clear vision, leadership that continue to cherish and view the aspirations of their people. Our policies must be informed by the real experiences of our people in the rural areas, in the townships. And those who are elected must continue to articulate these views and aspirations. So as the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, we are happy to be at this moment. And we know that so many other comrades, our veterans, and many more played part, continue. We are seeking to reconnect with these heroes, because without reconnection, a nation is not made out of one generation. A nation is made out of all the generations that made it. And this generation of people, of freedom fighters that we are paying tribute to today, are a part of the nation. For us to be total and to be free, we need to put them and respect them and put them at their appropriate place. Now, and where is that place? That place is when we begin to redefine our history as a free nation and put it in the proper context. Now, it is therefore very important for all of us, and the African people in particular, to always remember that if we cannot able to trace and reconnect with our past, our current and our future will always be very difficult. Now, we are therefore want to call all the African people, particularly when it comes to our heroes, we need to be united and be one. Because all of them, I'm sure they're in one heaven. And they will continue. We are seeking the type of freedom, the type of future that our children and the future generation will be able to enjoy. With that, Minister and the members and everybody, as the PAC, we are grateful that this effort has been made. We always feel it is too late, it is too late, but it has at least happened. We have these heroes and we need to accept that we have them. But I think there's need in this Freedom Park to at once meet all of us, the liberation movement, and those who contributed to our freedom, and able to remember all of them properly and put them in their history. And we need to write our history correctly. Thank you. Thank you very much, President. Your last statement, I think the CEO of Freedom Park should take it seriously, because the purpose and mission of Freedom Park is to remember This is a site where the nation should come to remember, because a nation that cannot remember where it comes from, it will get lost. We cannot afford to forget where we come from. We should always remember what happened to us. Now, before I call on the minister, I'm going to call the mayor, the executive mayor, to come forward. The executive mayor deputy to come, just to have a few words also. Then we hand over to our minister to give the words of support to the families. Executive mayor, it is your time.
Program Director, Minister, all leaders from the ANC and the PAC, particularly the President of the PAC, distinguished guests, families, ladies and gentlemen. Program Director, everything we do every day marks our journey to freedom. It is a freedom from various painful things which happened to us without our consent and our approval. This government of the people took a firm decision that we will walk this difficult journey with the affected families, who we are highly proud that their sacrifices contributed immensely to our freedom as it continues to evolve. I'm here to continue to be part of the history, to see to it that the four families of Manzeville, for the city of Mogale, a city of human origin, with a site declared a cradle of humankind, they find disclosure to the brutally and ruthless period they were subjected to by the heartless apartheid government. On behalf of Mogale City, we thank the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Honorable Advocate Michael Masutha, for demonstrating determination and dedication to ensure that disclosure to our communities happens. We appreciate cooperation of our families and all political parties involved. Thank you very much.
We a message of support from the military veteran department. I don't know. Thank you very much. Now it is time for our minister, Honorable Minister Masutha, to come at Fanaka a message to the families and the nation as a whole.
of our fallen heroes long live. Comrades, thank you very much. Program Director, Reverend Mwerani, leader of the PAC, Ntate Marius Moloto, and the rest of the PAC leadership, representatives of MK, MVA, and all other structures, as well as all representatives present of the African National Congress, the families of the bereaved, all leadership present here from various structures, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. I am here to officiate at this solemn occasion on behalf of the government of the Republic of South Africa in terms of the Truth and Reconciliation Act, as well as the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which required of us as the Department of Justice and as part of restoration and reconciliation of our nation to perform a task which was to identify the whereabouts of those amongst our heroes, our fallen heroes, whose remained a mystery, could not be found. Their whereabouts could not be established. That we undertake a task of going about piecing together the missing links, connecting the dots with the ultimate objective of identifying wherever they may be resting, confirming their identity, and hand them over to their families and beloved ones, including the liberation movements under whose auspices they made the very last and ultimate sacrifice with their own lives. We have been seized with this task for some years now. It has been an arduous and painstaking exercise. Out of the approximately 500 or more identified through the TRC process, of those who were executed in various ways through what we refer to as extrajudicial executions. That is in the form of assassinations and other methods, cruel methods that were used by the apartheid regime to suppress dissent and to suppress resistance through struggle, armed or otherwise. We are thus far able to report that we have only succeeded in identifying 94, less than 100, that is less than 20%. We have thus far, since the start of this project, exhumed some 153, both judicial and extrajudicial executed amongst these heroes. And today, we are yet gathered here today together with the same purpose of handing back the remains of these heroes to where they belong, to their families, their loved ones, their beloved liberation movements, so that they can have a decent farewell, an opportunity they were yet to receive till this day. Now, government established the Missing Persons Task Team to locate the remains or whereabouts of people who disappeared under mysterious political circumstances during the apartheid era. A team of highly qualified specialists has been put in place to work tirelessly on these cases of missing persons. This is part of government's efforts to assist families of apartheid victims to find emotional and spiritual closure to the wounds that could never heal without knowledge of the whereabouts of their loved ones. And I must say, it is particularly symbolic that this solemn ceremony occurs during Freedom Month and just a few days before we commemorate Human Rights Day, which others would prefer to also recognize as Sharpeville Day, especially as the official commemoration this year happens at Sharpeville, which reminds us of that fateful day when many of our brothers and sisters, fathers and mothers, laid down their lives in resistance to oppression. So that even as we proceed later, the next few weeks, to choose the government of our choice, we should never forget that this freedom, this democracy, this right to vote did not come cheap. As I indicated, I am here to lead this ceremony on behalf of government in terms of legislation, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission Act, whereunder the TRC mandated that these exhumations and handovers for reburial be conducted in order to right a wrong that was committed in our history. Allow me to just deviate a little more, a little further from script and say the following. Just over a century ago, South Africa had an unprecedented opportunity to create a new state in which everyone who lived in this country would have a place in the sun. This was in the aftermath of the so-called Anglo-Boer War, when the so-called Union of South Africa was formed in 1910 in terms of the 1909 South Africa Act. It is sad and unfortunate that a rare opportunity was missed on that occasion when a country could have been born out of all its people that represented the aspirations of all its people. And that opportunity, out of pure selfishness, was missed, and instead a state was formed to represent the interests and the aspirations of a minority which makes less than 10% of the population, namely the white minority. At the time, in terms of the 1911 census, on the population size of South Africa, the South African population stood at 6 million, almost 10 times less the size of the population today, just over 100 years later. The task then to create an inclusive nation where prosperity would be shared amongst all the people was far less given the sheer number of people who lived in this country than the task a democratic government, regardless of which political party that democratic government would have been under, would have been confronted with 100 years later in 1994. To provide for 10% or less of 6 million people, which confronted the government of the day in 1910, is no match to the task of reversing the inequality that was systematically architected over a period of 100 years that resulted in 90% of a population that had since grown almost 10 times 100 years later. And I just thought that that context, which in economic terms could be called an opportunity cost, is something that we don't often talk about enough, I believe. Because that explains why Others have amassed so much wealth purely because they happened to have the advantage of race. And how, on the other side, many more live in squalid conditions because of a legacy of 100 years of social and economic marginalization. And I believe going forward it becomes critical, even with our political divisions, to remember that we have a much bigger task ahead of us. That is correcting this wrong, the legacy that emanates from it, and that the only way we can correct this is when we put our differences aside and focus on that which is a common task, a common burden that confronts all of us. And as Minister of Justice, I also want to say this very firmly, that as government, we despise everything that is done, whether in the name of government, of the ruling party, that takes away the most sorely needed resources to reverse this legacy because of self-interest. And I believe it is the task of all of us as a nation to ensure that the resources of this potentially richest country on earth are directed towards the advancement of the best interests of all our people without exception. The remains we are handing over today reflect a range of different organizations and circumstances of death. They remind us that the struggle against apartheid was complex and wide-ranging, and that forms of repression were various, including the use of agents by the security police. They also point to the painful difficulties experienced within the struggle against apartheid, the conditions of suspicion and fear that sometimes resulted in the deaths of those within our ranks at the hands of its own members. The stories of their deaths include shooting, ambushes by security police, hangings, executions on the gallows by the state, and fatal stabbings by members or supporters of the liberation movement. The dead include members of the ANC, the PAC, and the Mass Democratic Movement. Thabo Ramutle from Garankuwa, who left South Africa in 1982 to join the African National Congress, the ANC, and its armed wing, Mkhonto weSizwe, was one of 6 MK members who were shot dead in a planned operation by members of the Far Northern Transvaal Security Police. Members of the SADF's 5 reconnaissance battalion were also involved. The security police obtained information from an informer based in Botswana that a group of MK members would be entering South Africa. The security police made a combi available via security policeman Matthews Seshwana, who offered to provide transport via the Botswana informer, saying his father was a taxi owner. On 10 July 1986, Seshwana collected the 6 MK members at the Botswana border and drove the vehicle to a pre-arranged spot at a low river crossing in South Africa near All Days in Limpopo. There he jumped out of the vehicle and the security personnel opened fire on the vehicle. All 6 MK members were killed. It was later alleged that one who was injured was executed on the spot by one of the security police members. 14 members of the security forces applied for amnesty. All were granted for the murders except for those who either did not participate in the actual killings or were only part of the original planning, where only arrests were envisaged. After the ambush, 3 of the deceased were identified by their families and reburied. The remaining 3 were buried as unidentified paupers in Makado. Now, the missing persons task team traced their graves and DNA tests were used to identify them. Tabora Mutle, who was known in MK as Gift or Given Kavela, is the last of the 6 MK members killed that day in July 1986 to finally go home. Now, Priscilla Musreu, also known as Kuki Zwane, was a young woman aged 22 who was born in the Eastern Cape but came to live in Soweto. She became active in UDF and youth politics in Soweto. She joined the group of youth associated with the Mandela United Football Club during 1988. In the turbulent period towards the end of that year, it is alleged that she became a target of suspicion with the football club. She vanished on 17 December 1988. Inquiries made by her family did not yield answers, although they were later told that she had left the country. A subsequent police investigation during the 1990s established that the body of a young woman had been found on 18 December 1988, dumped near Orlando railway tracks with her throat slit and chest stab wounds. The young woman had later been buried as an unclaimed and unidentified pauper. The body was exhumed by police, but the matter was not finalized and the remains were reburied. During the work of the TRC, Jerry Richardson, the coach of the football club, applied for amnesty for her death. He stated that he was told that she was under suspicion of being an informer and that he and others and other football club members were involved in stabbing her, cutting her throat, and dumping her body near a railway line. Richardson subsequently died. He subsequently died in prison. The Missing Persons Task Team retraced the remains, exhumed them, and conducted forensic examination, enabling the identification to be concluded. Priscilla Musweu, known as Kukizwani, will now go home to the Eastern Cape for burial. At least 61 members of the Pan-Africanist Congress's armed wing, POTO, were hanged in the 1960s. The Krugersdorp 4 being handed over today are among them. They form part of the gallows exhumation project launched by us in 2016, aimed at recovering the remains of political prisoners who were hanged on the gallows prior to the suspension of the death penalty in 1990. The bodies of the hanged political prisoners remained the property of the state and were given proper burials in municipal cemeteries around Pretoria. Families were denied the opportunity to bury them. In all, 130 political prisoners from various political organizations, including the PAC, the ANC, the UDF, and members of civil society were hanged on the gallows. The gallows exhumation project aimed to recover the remains of 83 of the hanged whose remains had not yet been found or recovered. We have nearly concluded the project with only 24 left to be exhumed. The Krugersdorp 4, Richard Motswahai, Josiah, my apologies. Motswahai, Josiah Mutsumi, Thomas Malakhehi, and Petrus Mtsole were arrested, charged, and convicted of the fatal shooting of a member of the security police. The policeman, Johannes Mokwena, was shot dead on 18 March 1963 in Krugersdorp. These 4 PAC members were sentenced to death in October that same year. Their appeal against their sentence was dismissed and they were hanged on 16 June 1964. Their bodies were exhumed by the Missing Persons Task Team from pauper graves in Mamelodi. They will be now reburied in their hometown of Mogale City. And at this juncture, let me acknowledge the presence of the Mayor of Mogale City and the tireless contribution he made in ensuring that, working with ourselves and members of the family, we were able to succeed in getting this ceremony to where it is today. The 6 individuals lying before us tell us about different parts of our painful past, all sought to contribute to the struggle for democracy in different ways, and today we pay tribute to that contribution and the price they paid. Their families gathered here before us have waited decades to be able to recover their remains and to be able to bury them at the place of their choice with dignity. They will no longer lie in unmarked graves, but will be buried by their families at their homes where they belong. Their histories must form part of the larger South African narrative of our past. We cannot forget them. We can't afford to forget them. The work of the Missing Persons Task Team in searching for those who disappeared in political circumstances will continue. Some of the challenges faced include the cases of those who died in exile, those whose whereabouts are known only to a small group of perpetrators whose identities are not known, and those whose records no longer exist. And I must say that many of these perpetrators are gradually fading away as they die one after another. We have to find another way to get these people to share the secrets of what happened, of the whereabouts of the many more who are yet to be uncovered, so that before they die, they help us to find closure for those that still await to hear of the whereabouts of their loved ones. Nevertheless, the government remains committed to the search in order to bring some form of closure to the families of the missing, including symbolic reburial ceremonies where remains cannot be found. And I just want to add there that the systems that were used for execution at times included complete annihilation of the body of the deceased, such that it is not even possible to identify the remains of the deceased. As I conclude, I would like to convey our sincere gratitude to the city of Ekurhuleni for supporting the exhumation project by providing human resources to the Missing Persons Task Team to assist with the exhumation. I'd also like to thank Freedom Park for allowing us the use of their facilities for this solemn ceremony. A special word of thanks to the families of our departed patriots whose remains we are handing over today. In a few weeks, our country will go to our next democratic elections. As we cast our ballots on 8 May 2019, we dare not forget that the right to vote that we enjoy today didn't come free. The people of South Africa are today able to have a say on the leaders who will constitute the government of their country, because your sons and daughters made the ultimate sacrifice that made that possible. They have lost their young lives in most instances, and bequeath us the precious right to vote and many other freedoms that we did not have during the evil apartheid years. We thank you for giving our nation these brave warriors who stood up against tyranny when it would have been easier and safer to remain silent. They will never be forgotten. As you will be walking the painful final mile that will undoubtedly arouse painful memories. We wish you strength, comfort, and fortitude. We hope that the souls of these freedom fighters will finally find peace. Please keep their stories alive, mark their graves boldly, and tell their children, grandchildren, and communities that they were heroes who paid the supreme price to bring us the freedom and democracy we enjoy today. And do tell the children that they are warriors who kept alive the anti-colonial struggle that was started by heroes of our people like Chief Ochmayo, Kgoshi Mokopa Makgoba, Inkosi Makoma, Inkosi Hintsa, Kgoshi Sekhukhune, Khosi Makhadro, Inkosi Bambata, and Hosi Soshangai. Let me finally assure you that as government, we have picked up the fallen spear. We have on a daily basis taken the battle and waged a struggle against the dehumanizing legacy of colonialism and apartheid. And of course, we acknowledge that it is not easy, that it is a road that is going to be very long, and sometimes our people lose hope, lose faith in us, but we shall continue to soldier on to bring about the dream that these fallen heroes dreamt when they embarked on the struggle for liberation. Whenever you see a new court in your area, a new road, a new school, a new clinic, you should know that these developments accrue from the struggle and sacrifices of these heroes. The struggle against unemployment, landlessness, sickness, and racial discrimination continues. We will not rest until all our people live in better conditions and in dignity. This is the best way to honor these heroes and many others who paid with their lives for our democracy and freedom. I thank you.
There was a live crossing. The Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Masutha, handing over the exhumed remains of anti-apartheid activists at Freedom Park in Pretoria. This ceremony forms part of the department's efforts to implement the recommendations made by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the TRC, which aim to bring closure to the families of those whose lives were lost due to political activities during the apartheid government. So if you've just